bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
I have to say, I like this music, okay? It's by Possessed Tranquility. I said, you know what I want? I want something that's kind of on the order of the intro song of the TV series on Cinemax, Banshee. I said, take that, listen to that, and that's by Methodic Doubt. Look at that and give me some Methodic Doubt. By God, they did. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It's question mark, I guess. Today is Thursday. It's August 10th, the year of our Lord 2017. It's Thursday, which is what I quantify as the aftermath, which is all the shite that I couldn't normally fit into the Tuesday show and the sackheads wouldn't let me talk about on Wednesday because after all yesterday, the toilet backed up. Looks like somebody tried to stuff a dead Mexican water rat down the hole. Not only that, I had to change the damn cakes in the urinal because even the drunks were complaining. So I think it's time for you to belly up to the bar. We've kept you seated. Great to see you back. Let's see. I think Angel's going to be our bartender tonight. She pours with the best of them. The lava lamp is, in fact, lighted. If you look over to my right, your left, you'll see the lava lamp. Oh, that's right. If you're watching live on YouTube right now. Now, you can go to shrmedia.com. You can listen to us live on Spreaker. You can go to HP Pundit Radio, listen to us there. You can go to YouTube, watch me live on the SHR Media channel on YouTube. So there's all sorts of way to watch and listen to all the essentially buttery goodness of BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. I didn't even get to tell you about the drinks, did I? No, I didn't. And that's this. They don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation, politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free. The booze, not so much, okay? All we ask is that you don't stuff shite down the damn toilet, like some people I know. Flush it. Jiggle the handle. The water bills are going down. Thank you very much. Appreciate compliance. Works very nicely. Don't forget to tip your waitress. Don't forget to tip your bartender. Don't forget to tip Angel. I think I've said it all. And just like I have to say, I have to say this one thing. If there's something to which people in the entertainment and news and TV industry must give constant thanks, that's to the Trump administration. Because at no time, for at least the last year, at no time can you even begin to hint that it wasn't a new sack of shite every day. And it's true. It's absolutely true. Every day, new stuff going on. Jersey Joe, who is the reaver of common sense, and he's reaved the shite out of a lot of common sense, let me tell you. Jersey Joe was talking about temperatures and climate change, and I reminded him of the fact that the movie by Al Gore Algor. I think that's one word. That's how he spells it, Al Gore. And if I do it properly in my nice accent, it's Al Gore. Al Gore. Good to see you, Al Gore. Isodates, they sue the throat. Hey! But wait! It's grand. I was going to talk about the temperatures, but it's none other than the, THE, all caps, the underground professor, otherwise known as Dr. Michael Jones, who is calling live and direct into the saloon right now from Texas. Not from Arkansas, not from Kansas, but from Texas, or as some people call it, Tejas. So good evening to you, underground professor, Dr. Michael Jones. Welcome to you, sir.
How y'all doing?
Doing fabulous. Well, you know what? Here's the good deal. Jersey Joe was talking about the temperatures, and he's in Florida, so he gets temperature and he gets humidity. You're in Texas, so you get some temperatures and you get some humidity. Although I don't know where you are in Texas, you probably get the heat in the summer. Do you get a lot of humidity? Are you close to the ocean, or do you not quite so much?
Well, we're not near the ocean, but there's so many stupid man-made lakes that were built. We got humidity now like you wouldn't believe. It was 98 degrees and 50% humidity today. So at least it's a wet heat.
Well, yes, there's always that to look forward to, isn't there?
Yes.
Dry heat. I always remember this. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I went to a profiling class put on by the FBI because I was working homicide at the time, and I wanted to get some insight into profiling, depending upon the particular characters that I came across. Well, it was in the summer in Scottsdale, Arizona. And at that point, I'd not yet encountered the heat of Scottsdale, and that was like the wrong time to hold a damn class. Great motel, great air conditioning. Two things immediately that I noticed about Scottsdale, Arizona. Three things. Number one, I didn't see any dogs. I didn't see anything moving during the day except people in cars with rolled-up windows. Number two, I didn't see any bums in Scottsdale, Arizona during the summer. Number three, I noticed that at night, late at night, for Scottsdale and Phoenix PD, guess what? All the senior guys work the night shift, and all the young folks work the day shift, which is the exact opposite of the way it is here in Fornicalia, as I am wont to do, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied Fornicalia.
Yeah, the reason being the heat.
Oh.
It's cooler at night, so it's a lot easier to function.
Oh, my God. It was bad enough working where I did, and we had dark uniforms anyway. Most agencies do, except for CHP and some other people who wear khaki. God bless them. But we wore dark uniforms. And, of course, I worked everything. I worked mostly swings and graves. Not so bad. But then, of course, you throw on a vest over that and all the GURP that you have to wear around your waist and whatnot. That's a warm day. Holy crap. So other than that, how did you enjoy the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Well, let me tell you that as bad as that was, try being in Saudi Arabia with wearing Mach 4 gear for chemical warfare. That was hot.
I could no more imagine doing that than the man in the moon. And I have to tell you why. Yeah. Some people don't know this about me. I decided in my infinite stupidity, again, many years ago, that I wanted to be an EOD. So I got sent to the Redstone Arsenal in Alabama for training. One of the things that you do in training is, guess what? You get to wear the EOD suit around.
Oh, yeah, the bomb suit?
Yes, the bomb suit. Well, at the time, they were about 95 pounds. Well, they've grown since then. Now they're about almost 100 pounds with all the crap that you throw on them. That was another reason that I decided it was time to get out of the EOD and the fact that I didn't want to be called either Stumpy or Monopod. So I thought those were excellent ideas, excellent reasons to get out of EOD.
Yeah.
So how are you doing this?
I can't think of there being a bad reason to get out of EOD.
No, I thought it was going to be cool because, well, actually, it was for a while. I got into a couple of call-outs, and then a couple of things occurred. This has nothing to do with the Constitution. I have no idea why I'm telling you this, but I went to a Tactical Response Association convention in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that was in the 80s. That was the day I left for that was the day the Challenger blew up, as a matter of fact.
Oh, goodness.
And
yeah,
so
I remember that. I
that's
was in Tucson, Arizona when that happened. We were sent out to collect all the bits.
Oh my God, that's a story in and of itself.
Right.
So we flew over there. We went to the convention. There were some CIA guys and some operatives from Virginia, from the farm, that were teaching us various things. And there was a display, an EOD display of det cord out in the big parking lot of one of these hotels, and they were going to broach a door. And one of the guys doing this was an LAPD, just known all throughout the EOD world, by the name of Arlie McCree. And I met Mr. McCree, grand guy. It was like almost like if in politics you meet the president, that's something big. In EOD and demo stuff, you met Arlie McCree, and that's something big. The sad thing was, not more than about 2 or 3 weeks later, Arlie McCree had his lungs blown out by an ordinary pipe bomb, which he had diffused hundreds and hundreds of times before that. Although people always tell you one of the most deadly things in an attempt to defuse is a pipe bomb, because when people assemble them, they tend to get powder in the threads. And when you begin to unthread them, if that's what you decide to do, rather than just blowing them up completely, that's an excellent way to end up detonating a pipe bomb. And again, that doesn't have anything to do with the Constitution. It's just... Okay, you're listening to BC's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, where we have Flowing of Consciousness Radio right now. It's just, that's all it is. Flow of Consciousness Radio. All right, well, let's get down to basics. Number one, thank you ever so kindly for appearing on Thursdays. We really appreciate that, because I think there's a lot to learn about the Constitution. If you don't mind, though, what I'd like to do is go back to something that I thought was incredibly, incredibly important that you mentioned last week that I think we need to emphasize here. Something that, until you mentioned it, I had never thought about it, and that's con law. That's how you teach the Constitution. And you pointed out there are two very specific ways in which to teach all these young, spongy minds con law. You can either teach them stare decisis, or you can teach them the history. Can you expand on that? Because I think that's critical, and that tells me that's where the hell we're getting all these morons these days.
Right. This is how you get someone like Obama, who claims to be a constitutional professor and expert, and then he is. But just what he knows isn't that relative to people like us. They have two ways of doing it, like you said, stare decisis and then the debates. That's the way I word it. And so you have, and the most common way of teaching it is the stare decisis way, which means historical patterns. It means precedents in English, stare decisis. And so what they do is they take Supreme Court decisions and they teach that as the way to teach the Constitution. The theory being that the only way to understand the Constitution is by how it's been interpreted over the years by the different courts of the country. And not just the Supreme Court, but all the courts. And that is the true interpretation of the Constitution, and therefore the true meaning of it. It doesn't matter really what the words of the Constitution say, and it doesn't really matter about original intent of the Constitution. What really matters is how it is in play. And that is a good argument, I have to say, because, while we can sit here and argue about what it's supposed to be, it's how is it really? That is important. And that is the argument for teaching stare decisis. Okay, now, having said that, I think that's great, but it's only one leg of a three-legged stool. You need to know the stare-dices, but you also need to know the original intent, what the founders meant the Constitution to be. And then so you need to know things like the Federalist and Anti-Federalist Papers and the Constitution debates, for the debate on the Constitution, the notes on the constitutional debates. And then you should also know about the ratification debates of the Constitution. And that's the most forgotten leg of all this, is the ratification debates, because this is what the states were saying when they were voting to ratify the Constitution. And this is, by the way, the Constitution is the only law that we, the people, voted on. All of us came together. Of course, that means those with a franchise, those that actually had the right to vote. But at no other time in America's history did we all come together and vote on something.
Massively historical.
Yes, and it changed the world, didn't it? It was a 10,000-year leap, which is one of the most fantastic books ever written, is the 10,000-year leap. I think it should be mandatory reading for all students and all politicians. But
do you know the author offhand?
Yes. What's that?
Do you know the author offhand of that, the 10,000-year leap?
Oh my goodness, Mark Scusen, maybe. I met his grandkid at Freedom Fest when I met you.
Really? Now that would have been really cool.
Yeah, he was there, and let me think here. It is not.
Tell you what,
Yeah, it is. It's Mark. It's Scusen. Skousen.
Okay, all right. The only reason that I was asking
his first name was Mark.
Is because when I post the show tonight, I'm going to recommend, on your word, of course, that everybody go out and get a copy of that, because if you say that that's fundamental in terms of history, then as far as I'm concerned, it's worth reading. So I'm going to put a link in the blog tonight to that book through whoever I decide to go through.
Amazon or something? Yeah.
Yep.
See, now the title of the book is A Miracle That Changed the World, The 5,000-Year Leap, Principles of Freedom 101. And that is basically what I do as a show, is Principles of Freedom 101 as a professor. So what I do is I teach what freedom is and what are your duties and privileges of being a free person, because there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, and we tend to forget that. And there's some 26 or some odd principles that they outline. Things like what states' rights are or states' responsibility of children to parents, how we are as peacemakers, as a nation. De Tocqueville talks a lot about de Tocqueville. They get into the amendments, like the 10th Amendment and stuff, and they look through that. They bring up Adam Smith. They talk about why the Constitution in its original form could never be obsolete, as we are often taught by the left, that it's now obsolete. It's just an old sheet of paper or parchment that was written on by a bunch of old dead white guys and no longer relevant, etc. Anyway, as I was saying, the forgotten leg of the three-legged stool of stare-dices, the debates on the Constitution, and that is the ratification debates. And you may find this interesting, being a Yankee, that New York, which has some of the most draconian gun laws today, New York threatened to not ratify the Constitution if the Second Amendment was not put into play. And the only reason that they ratified it was because they were assured by, Hamilton, Madison, and Jay that a Bill of Rights would be installed. But the right to own a gun was so paramount to New Yorkers that they threatened to leave the Union and not ratify the Constitution.
See, that's anathema. That's when you hold up your arms in a cross and you hiss like a vampire to all the people that are in New York today. Is it, no,
right.
No guns,
exactly.
No.
It's like, what the hell? How have y'all fallen to this?
Yeah.
You have Kumo and these other idiots, and you have no rights to protect yourselves. But But yeah, so the ratification debates were the understandings of the states. And so what happened was there would be people that would debate the Constitution in the papers and, in town halls and whatnot of that time. But they would, they would say, okay, this is how we see, this is how we understand it. And then when the electors came and they voted on ratifying the Constitution, then there would be kind of a memorandum of understanding, if you will.
Okay. That
each state was sticking on there and saying, okay, look, this is what we see, and this is how we interpret this in the Constitution. You know how, like, I'll give you a perfect example of it in recent times. I'm pretty sure it started with Reagan, but I could be wrong on that. But when Congress would pass a law, and George Bush is the worst of this, he would then sign the bill into law, and then he would write a note to it saying this is how he interprets what the Congress just passed. And so, it would be, okay, well, I'm going to sign this, but this is what I think it means. And so it wouldn't be done based on what Congress thinks it means. It would be signed into law based on how the president interpreted it. And then the courts would have to fight it out because, the Congress would say it means this, the president would say it means that, the states say it means a whole different thing, and then, there you go. There's a big circus in the courts going through. Well, when the ratifications were going through, New York, Pennsylvania, these others would say, okay, well, we're going to ratify this, but we think this is what this means. And I apologize, I can't come up with any examples in my head right now what some of those were, but they're findable if you do a little research on it. But the ratification conventions of each state took notes, and during the debates that they were trying to ratify and stuff, then they would say, okay, well, this is how we as a state see the Constitution. And of course, New York was really wavering, and they realized that they didn't need New York to ratify the Constitution because one of the brilliant things they did was they said you only needed 9 states out of 13 to ratify it to make it law, as opposed to 100%. But they realized if they didn't get a big state like Pennsylvania and New York to ratify it, then that would hurt the way people perceived it as a rule of law and the way, how they would treat it, what kind of respect. So what began then was the process of creating the Federalist Papers. And that's why those were born, as to convince New Yorkers to ratify the Constitution. And so that was the audience. Of course, other papers across the country picked it up and reprinted it and whatnot. And now, and eventually it was made into a book form. And of course, today it's, the magic that it is. But that's why it was created, was to convince New York to ratify the Constitution. Folks, and so today we need all 3 of those, I think, to understand it.
Folks, we're talking to the Underground Professor tonight on BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, The Aftermath. It's Thursday, August 10th. And we were talking to the professor about the 2 ways in which the Constitution or con law is taught. And we got about 5 more minutes before the bottom of the hour break. I'd like to make a statement then, sir, and see if you agree with it. And then I'd like your input and your thoughts about it. I don't believe today that we could pass our own Constitution today. What do you think?
You mean create a new Constitution?
Well, if it were up the way the states are now, and if we had all of the people, as best we could, all of the states, and we had to approve the exact same thing, I'm not sure we could do that today.
Okay. Now I understand. Because to create our own Constitution would actually be unconstitutional according to the Constitution.
No, they did it then. I don't think we could do it now.
Framers of the Constitution today, and we had to pass it, I don't think it would ever come to fruition. We would be a splintered Confederacy.
How sad is that? To think about that?
And the reason why is, look at what's going on right now. We can't even rally around the president when Korea is raising its ugly head. Look at the division there. The people that have so much hate against this country that that they're willing to sabotage the commander-in-chief, and instead of just shutting up and letting it happen. The hate, the media that's coming out and lying to us about stuff. What was that? Some report about Korea just came out, and it was actually released in 2013, and they're making it sound like it was hot off the presses, and dumping it on Trump's lap instead of the fact that it happened during Obama's watch.
During Obama, exactly.
So if we got crap like that going on, I have no way we would ratify a constitution. Plus, look at the debates today. The Second Amendment says Congress shall make no law. Congress has made 1 million laws about gun ownership, violating the Constitution. And today, how many states would ratify the Constitution knowing that we had a right to bear arms? I would hazard that most of the New England states would boycott and form their own confederacy.
Yes.
And then you'd have the left coast do the same.
They would do the exact same thing. And all what would be left is all the shite in the middle and some stuff to the south. And again,
Right.
Dr. Jones, what the hell? What a sad, disappointing commentary that is on the United States of America and where we are right now.
Yeah,
We
exactly. And then to make it worse, we don't have the statesmen with the intellect or the love of country that was going on in the 1780s.
You'll get no disputation from me about that. We've got about 3 more minutes before we go to the break. You open that door, and I'd like you to walk through it a little bit, because I know you do politics as well as the Constitution. So give me your thoughts on North Korea. In other words, if Michael Jones is sitting at the desk of the president and he's listening to what you have to say, what kind of input might you give the president?
Oh, I tell you what, I tell him to keep up the tweets, keep up the rhetoric. Don't let this guy off the hook. But I would caution violence, against violence as a first course of action. I've, one of the things I did in the military is I flew on RC-135s, and we kept an eye on Korea. And I have long been a voice saying we don't need to worry about Russia as much as we need to worry about North Korea, because they're unpredictable. And they have the ability to reach out and commit violence against people. And now we know that they have, even more so, the ability to do that and the willingness to do that, kind of like Iran. I would point out to President Trump that Clinton and Obama worked their butts off to make sure that Iran and North Korea could be nuclear countries.
Yes.
And we have to be careful of that, because if they actually do become nuclear countries, then we have to change the way we treat them. It's like China is a nuclear country, and we have to be very careful with them on how we treat them. We can't just say you're going to do X and expect them to do it because they are a nuclear country. Any country that becomes a nuclear country then changes the dynamics of how we have to treat them and be wary of them and kowtow, if we must, to them, instead of getting our way. And I would suggest strongly that when Kim, and that's his last name, by the way, everybody keeps thinking it's his first name, but in Korea they start off with the last name, the surname. Kim On is dangerous, and I would say that if he does anything towards Guam, that you should just flatten his capital, flat out flatten it.
We're just
not
about
with a nuke, but conventionally.
We're just about at the break. Folks, we've been talking to the underground professor, Dr. Michael Jones, and we are going to hit that break in just a second, but I have one sort of little teeny-weeny thing to leave North Korea with at this point, and I quantify it as this. Giving nukes to Kim Jong-un and his regime is like handing a loaded .357 Magnum to about a 6 or 7-year-old and expecting really responsible actions out of that kid. I don't think that's going to happen. Folks, you're listening to the Berserk. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The reason that we're panicking now, real fast, the reason we're panicking is because they have the ability to aim and hit. And that was because of L'Oreal space. And that was done under Bill Clinton, who, in order to get campaign money, gave the Chinese through L'Oreal the ability for GPSing their MIRVs.
Bingo.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
Hold on to that thought, because I'd like to come back to that very, very much. Folks, remember, do not give 357s to 7-year-olds or 6-year-olds. We'll be right back.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Wow. I swear, someday we'll get new commercials. Oh, Lordy. You can't write this stuff. Folks, you're listening to me, BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin, in the Berserk Bobcat Saloon, here on the SHR Media Network and High Plains Pundit Radio. And we're also speaking to the underground professor himself, Dr. Michael Jones. Dr. Jones, I have to ask you, during the break, it sounded to me, were you feeding your dog?
Was I what?
Were you feeding your dog? I heard crunching.
I have 5 of them.
I knew it. I knew it. Oh, golly. Okay. We were talking with the underground professor about not dog feeding, but with regard to North Korea. And he brought up some interesting points about that. And just before the break, the undergrad professor brought up the point of, oh gosh, that's right, China. What's China's role in North Korea? And further, during the 90s, the mid-90s, what's the role of William Jefferson Clinton? Because frankly, it's huge, isn't it, sir?
Yes. I think if you're a historian, then it's easy to see the connection to Wilson to all this. Because, Wilson gave birth basically to Russia, communist Russia, because he pulled the support of the White Army and allowed Russia to settle their own problems, instead of helping them defeat Red Army. And then we had, how many decades of people being killed, some 80 million people or more being killed. Sometimes you see numbers as high as 250 million. And then, of course, we have the yanking back of MacArthur, who could have settled the Korea issue. And
yes.
So our politicians have really done this to us. And then you
Thanks,
have,
Harry.
Of course, William Blythe Jefferson Clinton, who gave very, very high-tech info to China. And China shared it with its vassal states, which is North Korea. And it looks like China may be losing control over North Korea, too, because the threats that they have made have not seemed to pull back the rhetoric of Kim. I think that's an interesting dynamic. As Trump has already said, if China won't handle the problem, then we will. and I believe him. There's a controversial, quote-unquote, preacher in Dallas. That whole title just pisses me off because the media says, controversial Baptist preacher Jeffridge, or whatever his name is over in Dallas. It's like, why do you have to tell me that he's controversial? Why can't you just tell me what he says and let me decide? But he has come out and said that Trump is justified to take action against North Korea because Romans or whatever in the Bible is saying that as the head of state, he has a responsibility to protect the people, up to including bombing and assassination, etc. Of course, as you know, we're no longer allowed to assassinate world leaders. We have agreed to that. And there's I don't know if there's a statutory law or if it's just a treaty or what, but America is not allowed to.
There's an executive order, and I happen to know this off my head. I have no damn idea why. Executive Order 12333, signed under Gerald Ford, that we cannot take place. We are proscribed from taking place in political assassinations. Now, if you believe that, there's a bridge. ...
Well, it's an executive order, so all Trump has to do is write a new one and say, hey, I can kill people. And boom, there you go. So, executive order only holds a commander-in-chief in check if they're unwilling to write a new one. But,
I have another question for you, and we texted back and forth today. What I'd like to do is give you some of the questions in advance. And one of them I asked, and I don't really know its viability, but I thought I'd ask it anyway, is what's the likelihood, or perhaps better stated or asked, what's the possibility and or in what venue would we take if somehow we wanted either to create an amendment or some kind of a law mandating that Congress abide by its own laws, no exception? Is an amendment a way to go to that?
It is one way. There have been one or two Congresses that pass that as an operating procedure for that Congress, but it only binds that Congress. As you know, Congress cannot pass a law that binds any future Congress.
Correct.
So the only way to force Congress to abide by its own rulemaking would be to amend the Constitution. That's the only way. No court order could do it, and no Congress can do it. So it would have to be an Article 5 solution. Now, it could be traditional, where Congress starts the Article 5 procedure, to amend the Congress, to amend the Constitution, or it could be a Constitution of States, which is more likely, because I really don't see the fox changing the rules of how it guards the hen house.
No, that's very true. Plus, isn't there a certain amount of jeopardy involved in creating a constitutional convention, which is my understanding is essentially what you'd have to do in order to kind of push that through? And if so, can you kind of tell us what is this constitutional convention thing?
Well, there is a myth out there that we could have a runaway constitutional convention.
That's what I've heard. Yes.
Made, left and right afraid of it. Okay. This myth was born out of the idea that the Articles of Confederation convention became a runaway convention, and we got the Constitution out of it. Now, for one thing, I would just say, boo-hoo, look what we got. We got the Constitution, one of the most amazing documents ever come out of committee in the history of man. But let's look at that just a little bit. For one thing, it's false. It's a false narrative. It's apocryphal. It was not a runaway convention. In fact, almost every delegate that went to the Constitutional Convention to repair the Articles of Confederation arrived with instructions from their own state legislatures. And mind you, this is back when, the states elected and sent representatives to these things, like the Constitutional Conventions, the Continental Congresses and whatnot. And so they sent delegates to repair the Articles of Confederation, but almost every delegate that was sent had further instructions that if the Articles of Confederation were not repairable, then they were to proceed with a entirely new constitution. So almost all of them showed up with instructions to do it. So it wasn't a runaway. It was pretty much a foregone conclusion.
Okay.
And Hamilton and Madison, all these guys that put this thing together and kind of tricked George Washington into coming, because he didn't want to. He had another obligation he didn't want to do, and he had turned it down, something with the Masons or something, I don't remember what, but he didn't want to mess with it. And then he was kind of cajoled into going to the Constitutional Convention, which he declined also, because he was saying, well, look, if I turned these guys down, what would it look like if I showed up for this? But then it was announced publicly that George Washington was going, and they did that to give weight to the Constitutional Convention, that George Washington himself was showing up for this, so it has to be important. And it would give gravitas, if you will, to the convention. Well, that kind of forced Washington to show up, because it was announced in the papers that he would, and he was rather angry and embarrassed by that. But that's a whole other story. So they show up to the convention. The articles are non-repairable. The states are recalcitrant over this. They don't want to give up their authority and their power, and they don't want to pay the bills, which is the major problem. Is that we under the articles, what was it called? The Congress of the United States under the Articles of Confederation were not able to do anything unless it was unanimous. And all the states had to show up, and they were having a problem paying the bills. And pretty much the only states that did show up to a meeting were the ones who had bills they wanted someone else to pay and to them, or a grievance. And so they didn't have quorums, and they had nothing but problems, and nothing was getting done. And this was going on, for year after year after we won the war, and we were becoming an embarrassment to the world. And places like England were saying, look, the way they're going, we'll just wait a couple of years, and then we'll pick up the pieces, and it'll all be back to normal. And so with that shame hanging over us, that we weren't capable of self-rule, and this great experiment was failing, the delegates were sent with the secondary instructions to create a new constitution. And of course they had the Maryland plan and others already in place to put down as a template to argue from, and then create a new constitution. And what we have is history. So it wasn't a runaway constitutional convention. I mean, I'm telling you that just to put that to bed.
Okay.
Because that's the argument today, that
yes,
we could have that.
That's what I've heard.
Right. So now that we know that it wasn't runaway, we can say, okay, well, then what's the big fear? If we create a constitutional convention and we say we're going to meet to talk about something, and let's just say that we're going to talk about Congress having term limits and that they have to live under the laws that they pass.
All right.
And that we will address no other issue. Okay, then the states have to come by and say, okay, we'll do that. And when a certain number of states, and I forget how many, but a certain number of states say, yeah, we'll go to a convention for that, then a convention can be held. Now, what happens is state legislatures have to pick delegates to sit and to represent their state. And then there's a convention, and the delegates show up with instructions from their states, and debate begins, and they create a policy. Now, if things go as planned, only those two things will be talked about: term limits and Congress living under the laws they passed.
Okay, so
if things go wrong,
I'm
sorry, go ahead. What?
If I could just interrupt for a second here, because I want to make sure that I've got this sort of linear pattern down. First and foremost, you have to come up with an agenda, a series of topics that you wish to address, and before you even go there, you first have to come to an agreement. This is what we're talking about, and this only. Is that
right?
That's a
correct.
Proper summation. Okay, and then that addresses all the fears.
Well, we're not talking about Second Amendment at this thing. We're not even going to send delegates if you're going to do that. And then the convention doesn't get held because there's not a quorum. There's not enough states to come together. And it's 3/4 or something like that of the states have to come together to even have a convention. And so you have to have an agenda, and it has to be very limited and specific.
Okay.
And if somehow someone gets something going at the convention, right? So now all these delegates are there, and they're talking about the two things that we said they can talk about. And one of the states that's blue and leftist sends delegates, and they decide they're going to talk about gun control. Okay, well, first protection is that the delegates there can say, shut the hell up, you're not allowed to talk about that at this convention.
Okay.
But let's say somehow they get it on anyway, and that the delegates don't stop it, and they think, well, you know what? Okay, we'll talk about the gun control. And let's say they pass a measure at the convention for gun control, and let's just say that it is that no one can have anything but a pistol, and it has to be a revolver, 5 bullets, or whatever. It doesn't matter what they come up with, but let's say they come up with something. Well, then what has to happen is those decisions that they make at this convention are then sent back to the states for ratification.
All right.
So now the state legislatures can either ratify it, or they can do what we've always done, and that's give it to we the people. And so when it comes back to Texas, then our state legislature says, okay, everybody in Texas, on the 4th Tuesday of October, we're going to have a vote on the constitutional amendments. And those three things come out, for gun control and limiting Congress's terms and forcing them to live under their own rules. Now, let's say somehow all three of those get on the ballot. Well, then we, the people in Texas, are going to vote, and you can pretty much guarantee what's going to happen. We're going to vote for the two, and the gun control we're going to vote down. So if somehow a runaway convention happened and they did stick some crap in there that we didn't like, then there's still the safety measure that we, the people, get to vote on.
Okay.
And right now, there are how many state governments that are in Republican control or split? The Democrats had very little. And with Trump just having another governor jump ship, that just made it even worse for Democrats.
Yes, Governor Justice. What a wonderful name for that.
How about that? So there are very few, there's not enough to force us to accept the Second Amendment limitations from the Constitutional Convention that runs away, because there's too many red states to say no. So we have that check also. But you go all the way back, it should never even happen, because if we have a Constitutional Convention, and it's not a con. People say that Constitutional Convention. It is not, because that is illegal under the Constitution. It is a an amendment convention, but not a constitutional convention, because that implies that we are rewriting the entire Constitution, and that's illegal. And it's illegal because they put the Fifth Amendment, or not the Fifth Amendment, the Article 5 clause in there, and said, you know what? All the people of this country came together and voted on this one law, which makes it the supreme law of the land. It's above anything Congress can do, because all of us said we are going to approve this. And if you want to change the Constitution, here's the procedures to do it. But you're not allowed to overthrow it. You're not allowed to remove it. You're only allowed to change it. And you have the two options under Article 5 to change it. So this con crap is just used to scare you because it's unconstitutional.
Okay. I have...
Of course, you even believe the Constitution has authority in the first place.
See, that's another reason that I love listening to you, is because that's out. That's factually inaccurate. The proper thing would be, if you're looking to an amendment convention, that's the proper appellation. But listening to this and what the Founding Fathers had already written into the Constitution, and what you just said in terms of, well, you can't even go there. You can't write a constitution because it's already there. You have to go back and as if you're creating it again. And my first three words were, and I can say this because it's internet radio, that's fucking brilliant.
Right, it is.
It's brilliant.
And one of the most amazing things the framers of the Constitution did was Article 5. The rest of it's brilliant. But this is amazing because it was a safety valve. And they realized, look, there's going to come a time where Congress is not following the Constitution, and we the people are going to blow up and get upset. And what has historically been the outlet is we riot, that we blow up, that we shoot back, that we kill all the leaders, and we start over. And they said, well, that's not good. That's not healthy. So what do? So we created a way that if we become disaffected with our leadership of this country, not our rulers, mind you, our leadership, the people that we give our own sovereignty to on a temporary basis and say, you are going to go out and govern us as our servants. And that's another thing that's kind of been lost in time here, is that they are our servants, not our rulers. The whole idea of the Revolutionary War was the rejection that Americans have rulers. And so what we did was we put that safety valve in there and said, this is how you can fix those problems without violence and bloodshed.
Every time I talk to you, I write notes about next questions to ask. And I've got about 4 new notes just speaking to you at this point. We got about 7 more minutes left to the top of the hour, and we are speaking to the underground professor, Dr. Michael Jones. And I have to give you this forewarning. Sometime in the future, and my guess would be it's going to take up the entire episode, the entire segment of your being here, and probably more. I'd love to talk to you at length and in detail about 2 things coming up: the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. Not at one time, because I'm sure both of those topics are massive and staggering. And the other topic that I just thought about is, I wrote down one word: sovereignty. Just that one word opens a massive door into which I'm sure you could walk through constitutionally and elucidate at great length about who we are as a sovereign people.
Yeah, and who we were, because we're not the same.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
And we've surrendered so much of that. Yeah, that'd be a great topic to explore. I had a show title tonight, Cops. Why do we have them, and do we still need them?
Okay.
And my theory is to talk about that from the perspective of sovereignty, because there was a time in our country where we policed ourselves, and we didn't have cops, and we've surrendered that sovereignty to a police force under the guise of living in civilized society. And I think it was a bad idea to go that route. Not that we have cops is a bad idea, but that we surrendered our sovereignty in that way, because we no longer feel responsible for protecting our own property and lives. And we think that's, the entire job of the cops. And we've surrendered parenting to teachers,
Oh, my God.
So everywhere I look around, I see that we have surrendered sovereignty.
Yes.
Wholesale. Yeah.
Absolutely. Were you aware, or maybe you even spoke about this? I talked about it last Tuesday. There is a mayoral candidate in Minneapolis, Minnesota, following the shooting by Officer Noor of the Australian woman and her killing by this moron. And I'm being very kind here, but there is a mayoral candidate in Minneapolis named Raymond Dehn, D-E-H-N, who said that he wants to disarm the police. Which begs in another question entirely. If you're going to have police, then you should do them the justice of arming them, because even in the UK these days, disarming your police, that's not working so well. So I don't know if you particularly hit that topic, but trust me when I tell you, this is a topic whose time has come, and there is a bit of a wave starting, and the people on the left would love to see this become a tsunami. And I'm seeing a trend coming here. And
the Britain is changing what they're doing. They're rearming their bobbies. But,
yes, they are.
I asked this question: why do cops have guns? Okay, it's strictly for one reason, and that's so they can go home at night and hug their kids.
Yes.
We give them guns because we send them out to protect us, so they're going to go in harm's way and risk their lives to keep us safe, and they have a right to go home. To see their kids. So we arm them to protect themselves from the bad guys. That's it.
No, that's true. That's very true.
Yep.
And trust me, there isn't any officer out there that doesn't want to go home from whatever shift they have at end of watch, because they're no different than you, they're no different from me.
And that's exactly the words I used was that we give them guns so their end of watch doesn't happen while they're working for us, but instead after they've retired.
That's rather heady and rather insightful. That's absolutely true. That's one of the things when I was a supervisor, and we got about a minute left to go in this segment with the underground professor, Dr. Michael Jones, before we wrap up. One of the things that I told my troops, and as far as I was concerned, they were my troops. I loved them, and they belonged to me. It was my job to make sure that they went home at end of watch. It wasn't the lieutenants. It wasn't the watch commanders. It was my direct job and my direct responsibility to monitor up to like 50 people at one time per shift. My job. And I took my job very, very seriously, which is why after all that time, people wanted to work for me. And when I retired, it wasn't the plaque that I got. It wasn't the cake that they gave me or the photographs. Really, that didn't mean a damn thing. What meant everything to me is the officers that came up to me prior and afterwards, after I'd retired, and said, things are not the same. I wish you were back. I loved to work for you. If you could mint another person like yourself, these people are not the same. And when we're going down a bad road. And I'm afraid that's absolutely correct. I have so many thoughts about the police. I'm looking to try to see if I can get Heather McDonald on here. Because she's got some incredible things to say with her book. Folks, we have been speaking to the underground professor. He's here every Thursday. It's Dr. Michael Jones. And, sir, thank you ever, ever so kindly for talking to us tonight. I could listen to you for hours. I don't have hours, so my appy polyloggies to everybody here. But, again, Dr. Michael Jones, thank you ever so much for your time. And good night, sir. We appreciate it.
That was a fast hour, wasn't it?
It sure as hell was. Oh, my God. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Good night, guys.
Folks.
See you next Thursday.
We're going to be right back. Got a little bit of a commercial break, and then we're going to talk about the various buttery goodness thingies, the moistlets that I might have in terms of politics, because, oh, my God, are things changing. Dr. Jones was going on about China. Well, there's some new information about China that just came out that gives you some insight as to Gee, I wonder what they're going to do with regard to Real Kim and North Korea.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, which is occurring every Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday on the SHR Media Network. By the way, it's Tuesday and Thursday on the SHR Media Network. Today is Thursday, August 10th, the year of our Lord 2017. It's the aftermath. We just got through speaking to the one and only underground professor, Dr. Jones. Dr. Michael Jones, and he was talking about China. I noticed just before the show, and thank God Joe didn't Bigfoot me, Jersey Joe, who has his show on SHR Media Network and High Plains Pundit Radio just before mine. Jersey Joe is a great guy to listen to. Luckily, he didn't get this topic, so all right, good, I get to tell you about it. Out of Reuters.com, I found this to be very interesting. Chinese paper says China should stay neutral if North Korea attacks first. But what does BZ always say about that? He says, but wait, there's more. And again, from Reuters in Beijing, if North Korea launches an attack that threatens the United States, then China should stay neutral. But if the United States attacks first and tries to overthrow North Korea's government, China will stop them, a Chinese state-run newspaper said on Friday. President Donald Trump ratcheted up his rhetoric toward North Korea and its leaders on Thursday, warning Pyongyang against attacking Guam or U.S. allies after it disclosed plans to fire missiles over Japan to land near the U.S. Pacific territory. Now, I find this curious that Kim Jong-un is pointing at Guam because I think, number one, I think he's done this before. This is not the first time that he's threatened Guam or his family. But I find it interesting that he's pointing at Guam because isn't that the island that Hank Johnson said if you put too many people on one side of the island, the sucker's going to tip over? So therefore, the learned scholars in North Korea must be thinking all it would take then is one missile in the right place, and the whole island would just tip over and capsize, just like that, because Hank Johnson in the United States obviously said that. Well, that's got to be true then, isn't it? God, why didn't I? God, I should have set up the sound for that. I didn't even think about that until now. I should have. Oh, God, that's why. Show prep, everybody. I'm telling you right now. Show prep. It's everything. Sometimes things just come into my fetid brain at the last second, and this is one of those times where if I had a producer, I'm my own producer, so that's why I didn't have it set up. But if I were smart, and if I weren't running 7 things at once, I'd somehow reach way over here and get onto YouTube. And God, that is so funny. Go to YouTube and put in there like Hank Johnson, Guam Island or something like that. And listen to what Hank Johnson has to say. I mean, it's just... Folks, people like that vote and breed. Oh my God. Absolutely incredible. China, North Korea's most important ally and trading partner, has reiterated calls for calm during the current crisis. It has expressed frustration with both Pyongyang's repeated nuclear and missile tests and with behavior from South Korea and the United States that it sees as escalating tensions. Now, do you see what China is starting to do here? China is trying to insinuate itself into the situation as the mediator, the people that are going to bring calm and rationality to this particular discussion, because we know that Kim Jong-un, he's kind of a hothead. And that Donald Trump guy, that guy with a dead orange cat on the top of his head, he's not really all that rational either. So we're going to be the big actor that comes in between the two and mediates. Because just as every leftist knows, if you just sit down at a table with a cup of coffee or a caramel macchiato, you'll be able to hammer out anything that you want, right? That's what negotiation's all about. You can always come down and you can speak to anybody rationally, can't you? All the time? I'm afraid that this is, in fact, going to come to a big clunk. I am of two minds about it. I am conflicted about it with this major caveat. Would we survive some kind of a nuclear exchange, depending on which way it went? Well, number one, yes, we would. Number two, would the United States be wiped out if Kim Jong-un was stupid enough to throw something at Guam or Japan or Seoul? My guess would be it'd be one of those first. And at the same time, multi-thousands of tons of artillery shells from the north to the south. Here's one aspect of it, however, that I continue to tell everyone about, that for whatever reason the media I've not heard it addressed once, and that's this. This guy's a loon in North Korea, but he's not that crazy, because prior to every launch, he picks up, or some designate picks up the phone and goes, 1-800-DON'T-NUKE-US. And so somebody at the other end in the U.S. picks it up and says, "Real Kim?" And the designee goes, "Well, I'm not little Kim right now, but just want to let you know, we're going to be launching here in about a day or so." Important safety tip. If you don't get that phone call, and trust me, this is known throughout the military, all around the world on the side of the United States, if something comes out of North Korea and gets beyond a certain point, trust me, folks in the United States know this is no act. It's the real deal. Is it survivable? Yes, it is. Will we ever have gone through what could potentially be a nuclear exchange like this before? No, we won't. Do we know specifically the results of these actions? No, we don't. Are we still worrying about EMPs? Yes, we are, depending upon the throw weight of the warhead and how it re-enters into the atmosphere. That's been historically the problem with North Korea, is their engineering in terms of, yes, we can send a missile up with a warhead, and then it leaves, it goes into space, and then it begins to come down, and as it comes down like that, it's got to be able to survive re-entry. There's the rub. Yeah, there's your cat stuck in the toilet right there. The corollary to all of this that you absolutely must consider, because dust will settle, including radioactive particles. What goes up will come down. The corollary to that is, let's see, South Korea is either the third or fourth major industrial power on the planet, right after the U.S. and China and Japan, industrial powers, nations that create and can subsequently destroy economies. So, though you, in whatever portion of the United States, something terrible is happening and woohoo, you missed, that shite's coming for you, because your economy and the way you live your life, probably for the rest of your life, is going to be affected in some fashion. Period. End of statement. That said, I am not an advocate of war. I've seen and I know a bit about what can happen in these situations. There was a great book. God, now I can't think of the author. But it was called The Threat. And it was written during the Cold War. Andrew something. Something. Anyway, what it said essentially was that we won the Cold War because we outspent Russia. But we spent billions and billions of dollars doing it because both of the major players in the game at that time believed in the MAD concept. And the MAD concept is mutually assured destruction. Go back to, I love this movie. Go back to Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. A lot of what is in that movie is from another movie, Failsafe, which is actually from a book called Red Alert by Peter, and his last name I can't think of. There are all sorts of checks and balances in this, including mutually assured destruction. When you're dealing with a country and a regime and an individual that you believe to whom you can speak rationally. Some people say that little Kim is crazy like a fox. Some people are saying that he's simply batshit crazy. Not knowing enough about him, I don't know on which side to fall. Some days I think he's smart enough not to do this. Other days I think I remain unconvinced. However, China today came out with that. That's another consideration in the mix. That's on a global scale. Closer to home, I'm going to play this again because you're going to have to tell me. When I heard this, some other people said, and I've been typing emails back and forth, and I got phone calls and whatnot. If you ever want to chat to me about anything, you can send me an email. I'm actually in the SHR Media email list now. I'm bz@shrmedia.com. So if you want to chat about anything or ask me a question, whatever, there you go. Send me an email. Some other people said that, and I railed about this on Tuesday, and I'm going to rail about it again. To me, this is a big deal. Other people are saying, shut the hell up, BZ. This is no big deal. Well, you know what? I think this really is a big deal. I've been creating a post for the past 2 weeks that is going to come out sometime next week. I'm not sure what day. And it's going to be addressed as an elegy, potentially an elegy to the GOP. Here's part and parcel of what just jacked me up, 210 over 190. And like I said, some people have said, BZ, take a chill pill, shut the hell up.
I'm not going to ask for show of hands, but I know everybody's saying we've been there, haven't done anything, which I find extremely irritating. And I'm going to tell you why.
This is Mitch McConnell, who said that Trump said, you haven't done anything, and he wants answers, and he wants action.
Congress goes on for 2 years. And part of the reason I think that the storyline is that we haven't done much is because, in part, the president and others have set these early timelines about things need to be done by a certain point.
That's Mitch McConnell is now speaking like the average state of California worker. What? Give me a fucking deadline? Expect me to produce for my wage? Are you kidding me? That can't happen. As a matter of fact, it can't happen. It's not going to happen. And by the way, as the state of California worker, I'm going to make sure and do my level to best to ensure that it doesn't happen. I'm hearing this same rhetoric from Mitch McConnell.
Now, our new president had, of course, not been in this line of work before.
Fuck you.
And I think had excessive expectations about how quickly things happen.
Excessive expectations. As I said last week, as anybody with a friggin' brain in the top of the head would say, let's see, you've had 7 years to ensure, and you said all of the GOP said in 2015 and voted, yes, we need to repeal the health care law. And then when the dust settled and they felt more comfortable in their chairs and a little bit more locked into their seats, then the rhinos really came out. But are you kidding? To set a deadline? No.
In the democratic process. And so part of the reason I think people feel like we're underperforming is because too many kind of artificial deadlines, unrelated to the reality of the complexity of legislating, may not have been fully understood. And of course, our political adversaries.
Not fully understood, because that Trump dude, he cannot grok the concept of how important our phony... And again, if I had a producer, I would have had Mel Brooks in, where we got to keep our phony baloney jobs. But unfortunately, I'm not thinking ahead like that tonight. Mitch, you're pissing me off, dude.
Adversaries would be love to say that anytime. So what I'm asking of you is to judge this Congress when it finishes. How much have we done to make America competitive again? And
Stop. Who made America competitive? Donald Trump. Why did immigration start to go down? Donald Trump. He was stymied by the courts, and yet we don't have everyone and their brother and Paco coming over like we did anymore. As Jersey Joe pointed out, people are starting to go through the U.S. and up into Canada, and Trudeau is shitting Twinkies over that.
Grow again, and that's part of America, making America great again, which is what the president talks about so much.
Yeah, he talks about that so much. So do you think there's sparks flying just a little bit?
Here in Washington, there is a new battle stirring, not between Democrats and Republicans. This is an inter-party dust-up between Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and President Trump.
Stop. Going to ask you, I know if you're listening to me live, you scream at your computer right now. Scream your answer at the computer. If you're in chat, tell me, am I full of shit? Am I making something out of nothing? Or is this actually of concern? Is this just more of the standard established hacks saying, you know what, we're rocks. And we're going to be, Donald Trump is Sisyphus attempting to push the boulder up the hill. And the boulder comes down and pushes Sisyphus back down any number of times. And as far as I'm concerned, the GOP is the fucking rock.
As we told you last night, McConnell jabbed at the president in a speech over what McConnell called the president's lack of knowledge about how Congress really works. Tonight, correspondent Peter Ducey shows us it did not take long for the president to fire back, and this just weeks ahead of an important fall congressional season.
Here's one thing that I'm hearing all about President Trump. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. He can essentially outwork anyone. He's up at 0:30 and he doesn't go to bed until late at night, and he's working his arse off during the day. And he tests everyone in his staff because he's a workaholic. These arseholes are not used to that. They are not used to somebody who actually is responsible for money spent. He looks at the United States as if it's a business and wants to know, where's our money going and who's responsible?
The president is mad at the majority leader, and he wants to know, what's the holdup? Tweeting today, quote, Senator Mitch McConnell said, I had excessive expectations, but I don't think so. After 7 years of hearing repeal and replace, why not done?
Thank you. Why not done? Oh, that's right. It was GOP senators who have a majority, a slight one, but still, it was the GOP who decided rhinos on the right, people whose R's should be changing, R's, or their arses, should be changing from R to a D and be done with it. So they decided that they were not going to repeal, because not repealing to me is saying this: you have no confidence in repealing Obamacare because as far as you're concerned, this is a hell of a statement. Obamacare is better than what we had before. Are you kidding me?
This @RealDonaldTrump tweet follows a comment earlier in the week where longtime Senator McConnell complained brand new President Trump doesn't get D.C.
Our new president had, of course, not been in this line of work before.
Stop. Have we ever heard anybody on either side of the aisle accuse a former president of, you're going too fast? Oh, you got to give us time to catch up. You're sucking the air out of the room. We can't keep up with you. You work too hard. Oh, we're tasked. I haven't.
And I think had excessive expectations about how quickly things happen in the democratic process.
But McConnell may be the reason the president has certain expectations. After all, in January, he said Obamacare would be repealed that month.
Yeah. Now we come back, and that's the reason I included this cut, is because that's why I like YouTube. YouTube and various forms of leftist media. There's a lot of stuff they don't want to let you see, but every once in a while they don't know what shite to take out. And this is what Mitch McConnell said earlier.
The first step will be taken in the Senate by the end of this week, yes, and then it'll go over to the House.
Right. When was that, Mitch? That was January 8th. What happened on January 20th? Oh, that's right. Donald Trump was inaugurated. Wait. Be still, my quaking heart. Let me clutch pearls, as Ken McClinton says. Pearl clutching, 1A and 1B. You thought this was going to happen? This is Mitch McConnell saying it before President Trump was installed.
McConnell also said he expected health care reform and tax reform done within the first 200 days of Trump.
Guess what? It's past 200 days. Not to say that Trump hasn't done quite a bit, but he's had to do it pretty much by his own self.
What the Speaker has done, which I entirely concur with and the administration's on board with, is to lay out a game plan through the August recess of what we want to try to accomplish.
A game plan through the August recess. By the way,
for myself, I intend to stick to the plan.
That's another deadline that came.
I plan to stick to the plan. Oh, you're a sticker, Mitch, are you not? As Paul Ryan stands to McConnell's right my left.
Came and went, but despite the rhetoric, the president just did the majority leader a favor with a strange endorsement, as in he endorsed the incumbent Senator Luther Strange, who is facing a GOP primary, tweeting, quote, "Senator Luther Strange has done a great job representing the people of the great state of Alabama. He has my complete and total endorsement." Analysts say the president's decision to endorse a McConnell ally instead of McConnell critic Mo Brooks is one way to try to keep the agenda on track.
The big question is, fine, okay, perhaps, is this Donald Trump actually beginning to grok the concept of playing politics in D.C.? Maybe yes, maybe no, but I'm multiply pissed. And later on this week, that post is going to come out where I have, unfortunately, in great detail and concern, example after example after example of the GOP wanting to shoot itself first in the foot, and now it looks like maybe it's aiming for its own head. You know, sometimes there are people who exist. My wife's mom, my mother-in-law, I'd never met her many times because right after we got married, I mean, a month or two after we got married, she passed away of pancreatic cancer. She said something to me that stuck to me then and now. Sometimes people exist on this planet as nothing more than examples of what not to do. Here's a person that falls into that category.
We're on the verge of nuclear war.
Yes.
Like, what are your thoughts on this?
Here are my thoughts.
Here's Maxine Waters, the gift that keeps on giving, talking about what she thinks about North Korea.
The United States State Department must be stacked up to deal in diplomacy.
Okay.
We cannot afford...
Stacked up to deal in diplomacy. Oh. Maxine, what does that mean?
...to be in a war. And I want us to be very careful, very alert to what is happening and to avoid war. And so I think we can do this with some diplomacy. But we've got to have Tillerson, who is our Secretary of State, get those positions filled for deputy, for assistant, so that we can engage with North Korea.
Really? Really? And it's not yourself, Maxine, or people of your ilk and stripe that are making sure that these positions aren't filled? Are you kidding me? No, she's not kidding.
I believe that...
Who is it also, by the way? Oh, that's right, the GOP. Oh, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
North Korea is interesting threats to the United States, but I think there are some things that they want from us, and we have to find out whether or not we can work with them on the things that they're asking for.
Right, because they're asking for so many things right now. Oh, they have multiple asks. They'd like some soda water, and they'd like some jacuzzi sent over. I think it's the 10-jet jacuzzi, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they have lots of needs and wants. Hello, Maxine. Have you ever gone to Google, and have you ever looked at the photograph, Maxine, of the world at night on the Korean Peninsula? You can specifically delineate the DMZ between North Korea and South Korea by this. There's actual lights on in South Korea. There are damn few lights on in North Korea. Hello, that's called a clue.
And so this is something that we should be very concerned about. But this is not the time to go bluffing and threatening. This is a time...
Maxine, I don't think it's a bluff.
For diplomacy.
I think what it is I think that's Donald Trump saying, for once, what he may consider doing. Oh, and Maxine, she's not the one that remembers that Rex Tillerson said of North Korea that nothing is off the table. Oh, by the way, that's also what Donald Trump has been saying as well. Now we switch gears just a bit. because there are political power plays and machinations in D.C. all the time. And we know that something of rather marked significance occurred in July of this year, and we're just now hearing about it. And that, too, is a power play. We're going to come back and talk about that. This is the final segment, folks, on BZ's Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Please come right back. Final break.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where their speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Okay, rule number 1 in radio is generally don't let people see you sweat. In other words, if you screw up, don't tell anybody about it. And it's the same way if you're making a presentation, a public presentation. What you generally do is you're going to tell people what you're going to say. You're going to say it, and then you're going to tell people what you told them. What I'm going to tell you right now, and Mary, I bring this up because Mary Brockman, you're so kind in chat. Thank you ever so kindly for being here in chat. The Alaskan is in chat. Mike is still in chat. Mary Brockman is in chat. We had White Mamba in chat. We had a few other people in chat, and it's getting late. Mary Brockman was so kind. She said, "You're doing a bang-up job, BZ." Yeah, until I finally realized that, that entire past segment from 9 o'clock to 9:30 on YouTube, yeah, you were looking at the Sackheads logo. You weren't looking at me for a half hour. I desperately need a producer. Okay, we were talking about something that just came up. Something that occurred in July, but we're just hearing about now, and that's regards this. Here's an article from Politico.com, and it came out, and the headline is this: Manafort switching legal team as feds crank up heat on him. Okay, what's that about? Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort is changing his attorneys as a federal investigation heats up into his financial transactions, according to people familiar with the matter. Manafort's case will now be handled by Miller and Chevalier, a boutique fim fam fum. It's a boutique fim fam fum firm in Washington that specializes in complicated financial crimes, among other issues, the People said. A spokesman confirmed the change. Mr. Manafort is in the process of retaining his former counsel, blah, blah, blah. Kevin Downing, a former senior Department of Justice official known for his work representing clients and firms facing complex financial investigations, will be working on the case. One of the people familiar with the matter said Downing will have help from other attorneys also working on the case. Why is this an issue? This is an issue because the case, the Mueller case, why they call him Mueller, I have no idea. That's not how you pronounce the Bob Mueller's name. Former head of the FBI, good friend of Jim Comey, obviously great friend of the DNC. Well, he's now impaneled a grand jury, and on July 15th of last month, he sent some FBI folks in raid jackets over to Paul Manafort's home and confiscated laptops, documents, etc., etc., etc. Despite the fact that Paul Manafort had been cooperating entirely up to that point. A number of financial institutions were subpoenaed. The Washington Post first reported the home search, and Bloomberg reported the bank subpoenas. And it says, Manafort has emerged as a key figure in the various probes into whether Trump's campaign colluded with Russian officials to influence the 2016 election. Special counsel Robert Mueller has been examining Manafort's personal finances and consulting work. Well, people like this don't do stuff like that for no reason at all. And here's the ploy. It's going to be what we used to do as a standard Fed squeeze play. And the play is this. You never let people see what cards you have. And the goal, the end goal of this will be to use Manafort and put him in jeopardy and squeeze him and see if you're going to get any yellow baby-like poo dribble out of him, and see if he squeals and gives up people above him. That's the only point, the only reason that you're going to be doing that. It's a power play. And it's a power play that you make under two circumstances that I've encountered while working for the feds. Number one, you do it because you are definitely in a position of power. And what you're specifically looking for is access to the triangle. You know, so you start out with the lower folks at the bottom of the ladder, the foundation, and it really is a triangle. Because as you go up, as you ascend, fewer and fewer people are involved until you really, what your end goal is here, is to go after Trump. James Comey, Bob Mueller's really good friend, got this whole shite rolling when Comey decided that in his infinite wisdom, he, an FBI director, was going to leak information to an uninvolved third source who then called the New York Times and said, look, I have documents for you to see. And the Times and the Washington Post published the story without actually having seen the documents. Because that's how much in the tank DC is right now. So that's the point. The point is to take Manafort, because I suspect they see him as a weak link for whatever reason. Don't know how or why. That's just the perception that I have. They're going to squeeze him until the juice runs down his leg. And they're going to see what happens to him. Or sometimes you do this when you really don't have much to go on. And you look at what you perceive to be the weakest link, and you go after that person, and if it doesn't pan out, you kick him to the side, and then you go after somebody else. Oh, wait, that's pretty much what Marilyn Mosby did, isn't it? Oh, that's right. Marilyn Mosby, the person who, having all of her prosecutions fail abjectly, she's now being sued by the various offices. That's another thing that occurred. So my opinion is Manafort is being squeezed because they're looking for more. They're looking to see if he'll squeal like a pig, boy. So maybe he will. But it's already happened. That was back in July. It's almost a month later. I also go back to this. DC media, New York media, leftist media, all across the fruited plain are looking for leaks. And I don't believe that the Mueller folks could control leaks. If there really was a there about Trump in a direct link with Russia in cash, whatever, I fervently believe you would have heard about it by now. Well, that's one particular issue. Then there's another particular issue, and that's of all of this. What is happening here? Here's what I believe it all kind of dovetails back to. And I've written and I've said this any number of times since November 8th of last year. The Democrats have not yet come to grips with the reality of November 9th. And there is no there with regard to Trump and Russia. These are my suppositions. So, as I've said before, the Democrats are going to come to rue the day that they absolutely insisted on opening that Russia door. And it's going to lead to other doors and other hallways that I think are going to be really unpleasant for the Democrats. Well, guess what? Today, by the way, and I think it's happening sooner than the Democrats would like, because this occurred today. This is from judicialwatch.org, which is a place that I go to quite frequently if you want to find out what's happening with freedom of information requests. Judicialwatch.org and the ACLJ, which is the American Center for Law and Justice, aclj.org, with Jay Sekulow as well. Those are two good places to go for sources of information. Anyway, this is from judicialwatch.org. It says, here's the headline. Judicial Watch victory. Federal court orders State Department to conduct a search of Benghazi emails of Hillary Clinton's closest advisors. What the fuck? 5 years. 5 years. 4 Americans dead. And 5 years passage, all I can say is now, hallelujah, we're starting to get some things done. Judicial Watch announced on August 8th, D.C. District Court Judge Amit Mehta ordered the State Department to search the state government email accounts of Huma Abedin. Listen to this. Huma Abedin, Cheryl Mills, and Jacob Sullivan, former aides of Hillary Clinton during her tenure as Secretary of State. The State Department is ordered to search in those accounts, quote, for records responsive to Judicial Watch's March 4th, 2015, Freedom of Information Act request. A separate Judicial Watch FOIA lawsuit first broke open the Clinton email scandal. So this is significant. It's significant and it's rather massive, I'd say.
A federal judge ruling in favor of a conservative watchdog group ordering the State Department to conduct a new search for potential emails Clinton may have written about the deadly terror attack in Benghazi. Let's bring in David Avella. He is chairman of GoPac. David, so the crux of this is that the State Department didn't bother to search its own server, and they didn't look at the email accounts of all the people that worked for her, including...
Oh, how did that happen? How? I don't get it.
People like Huma Abedin and other officials within the State Department. They didn't check their email accounts at all or their server for emails from Hillary Clinton, even though they were in their possession, they were in their control. They just didn't do that. Is that right?
That's certainly what it sounds like, and why this judge, who it needs to be pointed out, is an appointee of President Obama's. So for those who want...
I'm shocked. At this point, finding that out, I am in fact gobsmacked.
I want to suggest that this is some type of partisan, continued to be a partisan witch hunt. This judge was appointed by President Obama. What we need to find out and continue to find out is, were laws broken? And that's what this judge is ultimately wanting to find out.
Yeah. Let's bring in Joe Trippi now. He is former Howard Dean campaign manager. He is also a Fox News contributor. What's your take on this?
The judge ordered it. No, it's actually the Justice. Interesting, it's the Trump Justice Department that's arguing that made some of the arguments that this would be onerous on the State Department. I mean,
oh, stop. Shut the fuck up. Oh, it's the Trump Justice Department. Yeah, who's in the Trump Justice Department? And by the way, has Trump had the ability to make every installment he possibly wants to in the State Department? No. And all the GS ratings that were aligned with President Barack Hussein Obama, they're still there. The only people that get emptied to a degree, and not always, are the folks at the top. That's what the swamp is all about. That's what this deep state is all about. So that is political bullshit by this guy saying, oh, it's the Trump State Department that's being... No, bullshit. Again, it's the people that were placed under there and a long-term left-leaning people. What do we know about the State Department, for one thing? As Newt Gingrich has said on any number of times, 95% of the people in the State Department, when they contributed to political campaigns, contributed to the leftists, to the Democrats, or to Hillary Rodham Clinton herself.
That's an intergovernment thing. But look, they've, so far, out of all these investigations, there were 348 emails that had to do with Benghazi that were found. The State Department going through and internally and looking for more. The judge ordered it. They should do it, and it is an Obama judge.
Yeah, David. A lot of people out there might be asking, what is the point of this now at this point in time?
Well, it's also worth noting, though, that...
Stop. I know this is a Fox News reporter. Unfortunately, it seems to be a reporter who has little consideration for history and little regard for America. And lest you think that that is a terrible thing for me to be stating, let me continue to remind her and you and all the people listening live, all the people in the chat room, thank you for being in the chat room, and all the people that are listening currently in the podcast of this. We're still talking about 4 dead Americans, and something must be done to atone for those deaths. People are responsible. Never forget that. But that's what the Democrats want. Over here, bread and circuses, distraction, squirrel.
Hillary Clinton said today, or there are reports that she wants to become a pastor. Maybe she's going to try to absolve her own sins. But
that's a new one. I hadn't heard that one. Hillary Clinton, a pastor? Oh, she's going straight to hell.
To those who say, what's the point of this? Look, justice and rule of law are important. And for those who want to argue that, we should just close this down, these are the very same people who think this current Russian investigation should include any and all things related to President Trump, whether it has anything to do with Russia or not.
Thank you.
And we ought to at least be consistent about either the rule of law and finding out whether laws are broken or not apply to everybody, or just who you think they ought to be applied to.
Joe, one thing that always struck me is that when we saw that John Podesta email drum, we never saw an email to or from Hillary Clinton in all of those emails that were leaked on WikiLeaks.
Wait a minute. What do we know about Loretta Lynch? Oh, she had an alias. What do we know about Barack Hussein Obama? He had an email alias as well. Okay, you don't think of these things? Are you serious?
Where did those emails go? I mean, was she using an alias that we didn't realize? I mean, clearly we saw her with a BlackBerry all the time. Did she never send John Podesta an email? What do you think? What do you make of that?
That's a completely different issue.
I know, but I'm asking.
Yes, and I don't want to address it because it might make my Democrats look bad.
We're on Hillary Clinton's emails, and I think that that's a relevant question when we're trying to get to the bottom of, where are all of her emails that she deleted and destroyed, and
Hello, hard drives destroyed.
Destroying her BlackBerry. I mean,
Hello, SIM cards destroyed.
this is another one of those unanswered
Hello, sledgehammers.
questions related to her email.
Hello, ball peen hammers. Table for 30.
Well, she didn't turn over any campaign or personal related emails, and we know that. And that was a mistake, I think, that she paid for in the campaign.
Oh, she paid for. Oh, because she assumed that she was going to be installed. It was to be a coronation. She was due. It was her time because she put up with all the bullshit and the philandering, the serial philandering, bordering onto rape and probably proceeding right on into rape of her husband, William Jefferson Clinton. So putting up with that, she's due for an installation.
But there was nothing,
So she didn't get that installation. She's paid enough, hasn't she?
Nefarious about it. We've had a number of investigations, Justice Department, otherwise, Trey Gowdy, the committee, the House committees that have looked into all this.
Yeah, what do you know about a House committee? What do you know about those various committees? What do you know about Trey Gowdy? They sound good, fire and brimstone. What do they have the lawful teeth to do? Not much.
And there, no charges were filed. Trey Gowdy hasn't, and no one in the Congress on the Republican side who had
They can't file charges. That's not what they can do. They don't have the ability to file charges. It's only the Department of fucking Justice.
Majority in these committees brought anything against Hillary Clinton that was actionable. She paid a price for all of this in an election.
She did. That's true.
Oh, she did.
And
That's
I think,
true.
hey,
There
the
you go.
judge
Nodding
thinks
head
that,
up and down.
the
Yeah,
State
that's
Department
exactly
should
what he
look at
did.
its-
She
and
paid
it
the
should.
price. She paid the big price. She paid the ultimate price. Didn't she? And Jersey Joe, what was he saying earlier tonight? He was saying, it looks like the Democrats are having just a bit of a troubled time these days. That would be correct. Because here's an article from the GatewayPundit.com. Democrat Party faces fundraising crisis as doom and gloom. Now, this is in quotes. Air quotes for me. Doom and gloom message falls flat in Trump era. The Democrat Party in the Trump era is in shambles. The party is moving full speed ahead towards the 2018 midterms without a message, a destructive fixation on Russia, and a looming fundraising crisis. I have stats. I have numbers. Today's doom and gloom message isn't working with voters. So here's what we've got for numbers. Under the leadership of former Obama official Tom Perez, oh my God, do I wish that Keith Ellison, please, I was so hoping that Keith Ellison, Muslim Keith Ellison, would have been installed as DNC chair, but unfortunately they decided that they wimped out. I would love to have seen him in there instead of Tom Perez. But Tom Perez, a new FEC report reveals that under Tom Perez, the DNC finished the month of June $3.3 million in debt. Woo! Good news, eh, what? The month of May, 1 month prior, wasn't any better for the DNC, which reported $1.9 million in debt. What do these campaigns live and die by? Money, 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 money. In contrast, the RNCs on an amazing financial run, having raised a whopping $13.4 million in June. How are you going to get back all those seats that you lost to the Republicans, Democrats? How about all those governorships that you lost to the Democrats, including the one that we mentioned earlier from the East Coast, a Governor Justice who left the Democrats and scurried over to the Republicans? What do you do when you have no cash, DNC? Those are called consequences. All right, I have about another 3 minutes to go. I have on my blog what I call Kabuki Theater. And we're going to end tonight with Kabuki Theater. No, you know what? I do have 5 more minutes, and my end takes about 2 minutes. So, again, Jersey Joe brought this up, and I don't mind going there. I can't tell you. Oh, my God, the stuff I had for tonight, and the stuff that's on my blog, and the stuff that I want to talk about in radio. If I had a 1-hour show every night of every Monday through Friday, at least a 1-hour show, I would only just be able to just sample slightly all the shite I want to talk about every night. 2 hours, 2 nights a week is sometimes not enough, but unfortunately I have to fill that with other responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera. So actually it's 6 hours every week because I Bigfoot myself into the Sackheads radio show, and then also I insinuate myself into the Ken McClinton show on Mondays, who is still kind enough to have me on there and hasn't kicked me to the curb yet, so that's very nice. Here's an article about global warming. Here's a little bit of sunshine and truth in all the bullshit promulgated by Al Gore, who, by the way, has one of the most energy efficient of his multiple homes in the nation. This is from a website called The Australian. Or like maybe Fonzie. Temperatures plunge after BOM orders fix. And this is by a guy named Graham Lloyd, who is the environment editor in Sydney for the newspaper called The Australian. Recorded temperatures at the Bureau of Meteorology's Thredbo Top Automatic Weather Station have dropped minus 10 degrees Celsius in the past week after action was taken to make the facility, quote, fit the purpose. What does that mean? That means that they went in and with probably some basic tools, screwdriver, maybe a pair of pliers and a laptop, they adjusted the equipment so it was accurate. What a lie. A continuing series of lies is spread by the left. And good news, of course. The good news is that Al Gore rallied everybody and said, when my movie comes out, an inconvenient sequel, I want people to line up at the box office and I want rallies. And he has not even remotely come close to recouping the amount of money that it took to make this film, to continue all the lies that no one believes anymore. And by the way, people on the left no longer really listen to Al Gore because he's too damn old as far as they're concerned. I think that's absolutely grand. Hello, Schadenfreude, table for 500,000. God, I love doing these shows. I really, really do. I love being in here. I can't wait to come back next Tuesday. I can't wait to get back to the blog. I don't know about you guys, but I had a great time tonight. So in any event, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I got to thank you for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon here on the SHR Media Network and also on the High Plains Pundit Radio Network as well. I have a new email address which I shall send out to all the people around me, bz@shrmedia.net. Promotional consideration by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. Tiaras by My Little Pony all tonight. I've been wearing my, if you've been watching in YouTube, I've been wearing my F-16 Fighting Falcon hat. And of course, thanks to my very, very personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, as everybody knows, I shall be consorting in less than an hour. You can make bank on it, buddy. Thank you for being here, listening live, in chat, in podcast. God bless. Take care. Be safe, folks. Have a great weekend.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.